The dust had settled long before Nathan Carter stepped off his worn-out transport shuttle and onto the cracked pavement of what was supposed to be his future. The garage stood before him, a monument to rust and neglect, its metal walls dented and pitted from years of exposure to the harsh winds of Trappist-4C. Once this place had been a thriving service hub for all manner of starships. Now it was barely standing. Nathan exhaled, rolling his shoulders as he took in the sight. The air smelled of ozone and old lubricants, and the neon sign above the entrance flickered weakly, the letters barely forming Zarkov's stellar repair. Zarkov himself had long since disappeared. Debt, bad business, or something worse, Nathan didn't know. What he did know was that he had just sunk his life savings into this place. And if he didn't make it work, he'd be stuck on this backwater planet with nothing but his service rifle and a whole lot of regret. His boots crunched over shattered glass as he stepped through the entrance. Inside, the garage was a graveyard of forgotten technology. Rows of workbenches lined the walls, their surfaces covered in discarded tools and half-disassembled components. A broken-down service drone twitched in the corner, its optics blinking erratically. Overhead, the illumination strips flickered, casting shadows that danced across the floor. Nathan had spent years as a Marine, fixing mechs, servicing combat drones, keeping ships running under enemy fire. He wasn't just a soldier, he was a problem solver. And this place? This was just another problem to fix. His fingers traced over the control panel at the main desk, brushing away a layer of dust before activating the interface. The hollow display sputtered to life, listing outdated service logs and long overdue repair orders. Some of the records were corrupted, fragmented data scrolling across the screen in gibberish. But one entry caught his eye, a maintenance log flagged as high priority. The date was old, nearly 50 years past. Curiosity gnawed at him. He tapped the entry, and a loading bar crawled forward agonizingly slow. Then, the screen filled with schematics and technical notes. Encrypted messages, sealed directives, and a single warning stamped in bright red. For authorized eyes only. Do not attempt reactivation. Nathan's heart kicked up a notch. What the hell had Zarkov been working on before he vanished? A second later, a flicker of static washed over the screen, followed by a file name, Project Revenant. Nathan felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. That name, it wasn't just military jargon. It was classified tech. And whatever it was, it had been buried here in a forgotten garage on a planet no one cared about. His hands hovered over the controls. Every instinct told him to leave it alone. But he wasn't just any man. He was a human, a Marine, and if there was one thing he couldn't resist, it was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. He took a deep breath and pressed enter. The garage was worse off than Jack had first thought. Sure, the walls were still standing, and the roof only had a few holes, but the real problem lay in the systems. The repair bays were rusted out, the automated diagnostics were fried, and the old databanks, where service records should have been stored, were encrypted with a language Jack had never seen before. For the first 2 days, he worked tirelessly, stripping away broken machinery, scavenging for anything salvageable. He lived in a small cot at the back, surviving off ration packs and caffeine pills while fixing what he could with his limited tools. Then he found the logs. It was on the third night, past midnight. He'd spent hours trying to restore power to the central terminal, and when it finally booted up, a flickering holographic interface greeted him with a garbled, alien welcome. After some trial and error, he bypassed the security protocols. Marine field training in electronics had its perks. The service logs loaded. At first, they seemed like typical maintenance records. Fuel system checks, hull, plating reinforcement, engine recalibrations. But as Jack scrolled further, he noticed something strange. The log stopped recording standard repairs. Instead, the last several entries spoke of unauthorized modifications, secretive work that had no business in a simple mechanic shop. The reinforced plating is holding under extreme heat. However, the energy readings from the core are off the charts. If the client wants to push further, it won't hold. Jack frowned. Energy core? What kind of garage was this? He scrolled further. The modifications should allow undetected jumps past blockade systems. If the Council catches wind of this, we're dead. Jack's gut tightened. This wasn't just some rundown repair shop. Someone had used this place for something bigger. Illegal tech, experimental designs, maybe even black market upgrades. He kept scrolling until he reached the final entry. It was dated over 50 years ago. They know. We need to wipe the systems, clear all logs. They're coming. There was an attachment. A small, unmarked video file. Jack hesitated, then clicked play. The screen filled with static before clearing into a grainy recording of an old alien mechanic. He had deep, sunken eyes and scales that had begun to dull with age. He looked straight into the camera, voice hoarse with fear. If you're watching this, it's too late for us. The mechanic took a ragged breath. They're coming to erase this place. To erase the work. Don't trust anyone. If you found this log, get out before they find you too. The feed cut out. Jack sat frozen, staring at the blank screen. His fingers clenched into fists. Who were they? What happened to the old mechanics? And more importantly, why did it feel like whatever had happened wasn't over yet? The air in the garage felt colder, suddenly, like someone was watching him. Then, a metallic clunk echoed from the darkness behind him. Jack grabbed his sidearm. He wasn't alone. Jack didn't move. The garage was silent, but his instincts, honed from years of battlefield survival, told him something was wrong. He gripped his sidearm tighter, his breath slow and measured. Another sound. This time, the whir of something mechanical coming online. Jack turned swiftly, raising his weapon, only to see a single red light flickering from the darkness of the repair bay. A shape loomed in the shadows, unmoving but massive, half buried under a tarp and layers of dust. Jack narrowed his eyes. A ship? No, not just any ship. He recognized the sleek but brutal design. A war-class vessel, smaller than a corvette but built for high-speed engagements. Its hull was battle-worn, scarred from weapons fire, but the core structure was intact. A single word was barely visible along the side. The paint faded with age. Exodus. Jack's stomach tightened. He'd heard that name before. Back in his Marine days, during the war with the Galactic Council, Exodus had been whispered in briefings, an experimental ship, rumored to have been lost before its maiden voyage. Some said it had been destroyed. Others claimed it had vanished after a botched test flight. And now it was sitting in his garage. Jack lowered his pistol and stepped forward cautiously. Dust swirled as he brushed his hand across the hull. Beneath the grime, he could see modifications, ones far beyond standard military spec. The plating wasn't just reinforced, it looked like it had been grown rather than welded. Strange, intricate patterns lined the surface, pulsing faintly as if responding to his touch. He frowned. What the hell were they working on here? Then, without warning, the ship's main console flared to life. A deep, artificial voice echoed through the garage. User detected. Identity verification in progress. Jack stepped back, aiming his pistol at the flickering holographic display that had appeared just above the console. Processing. Identity confirmed. Marine Captain Jack Halstead. Status. Active. Jack's blood ran cold. His military credentials had been deactivated years ago. How the hell did this thing still recognize him? Before he could react, the screen changed, listing classified mission reports, schematics, and, most disturbing of all, logs from the ship's last pilot. He selected the most recent entry. A distorted voice crackled through the speakers. We failed. We thought we could escape them, outrun their sensors. But they adapted. They always adapt. Heavy breathing. The voice, barely a whisper now. If you find this ship, know that it isn't just a weapon. It's a message. They were afraid of what we built. That's why they hunted us. That's why they're still watching. Jack's eyes flicked back to the hull, those strange, organic-looking veins pulsing in a rhythm almost like a heartbeat. He exhaled sharply. No, this wasn't just a ship. It was something else. Something alive. A sudden burst of static filled the garage as the ship's display flickered again. Then came new words, glowing in ominous red. Warning. System reactivation initiated. Hostile signal detected. Multiple inbound vessels. Jack's pulse spiked. Inbound? Here, he sprinted to the garage entrance, throwing the rusted doors open. The night sky was no longer empty. 3 ships were descending fast, their engines glowing with an eerie blue hue. Jack recognized the design, Council Hunters, the same bastards he'd fought against in the war. His jaw tightened. They weren't here for a routine check. They were here to erase the past, and he was standing right in the middle of it. Jack didn't hesitate. His years as a Marine had taught him one crucial lesson. When you're outgunned and outnumbered, you don't hesitate. You move. You act. The 3 Council ships descended fast, their sleek, black hulls reflecting the dim glow of the planet's twin moons. Their thrusters kicked up dust and debris, sending a hot wind howling through the garage. Jack sprinted back inside, slamming his fist against the Exodus's main console. "Tell me you've got some weapons online," he muttered. The ship's display flickered, red warnings still flashing across the screen. Systems rebooting. Primary functions at 23%. Not good. The ships outside weren't waiting. A sharp, metallic thunk rang out as something embedded itself in the garage's exterior, a breaching device. They weren't just going to destroy the place. They were coming in. Jack's mind raced. His sidearm wouldn't do much against armored Council soldiers. He needed firepower. He needed an escape. A deep hum vibrated through the Exodus's hull. The organic plating pulsed, almost like it was breathing. Then, a voice, deeper, colder than before, emerged from the ship's speakers. Combat mode initialized. Jack barely had time to react before the ship came to life. Mechanical limbs extended from its underbelly, locking into the garage floor. Panels along the sides peeled away, revealing concealed weapon systems. The entire ship shifted, adapting, like it had been waiting for a fight. Jack grinned. "Now we're talking." A sharp explosion rocked the building. The breach charge had gone off. Jack spun toward the entrance, raising his pistol as dust and smoke filled the room. The first soldier stepped through the haze, tall, insectoid, clad in sleek black armor. A plasma rifle hummed in its grip. It barely had time to register Jack before he fired. The shot struck center mass, sending the alien staggering back. Jack dove for cover behind a supply crate as more soldiers poured in, their weapons lighting up the darkened garage with streaks of blue energy. "Exodus, any time now," Jack shouted. The ship responded. A thump echoed through the garage as an automated turret deployed from the ceiling, spitting out a hail of projectiles. 2 of the soldiers went down immediately, their armor punctured by high-velocity rounds. Jack took the opening. He surged forward, closing the distance to one of the remaining hostiles. Before the alien could react, Jack grabbed its rifle, twisted it aside, and drove his elbow into its faceplate. The creature staggered. Jack didn't give it time to recover. He yanked its own rifle up and fired point-blank. Another explosion, this time outside. Through the garage's shattered doors, Jack saw one of the Council ships engulfed in flames. The Exodus had fired, but the other 2 ships were still operational, and they weren't holding back anymore. Bright blue energy crackled along their hulls, building up for an orbital strike. Jack's stomach tightened. They were going to glass the whole area. "Exodus, tell me you've got something left in the tank." The ship's voice rumbled through the garage. "Primary thrusters, operational. Weapons, online. Shields, compromised. Suggest immediate departure." Jack didn't need to be told twice. He sprinted toward the ship's ramp as more enemy fire rained down behind him. Sparks flew. Metal groaned. The entire structure was seconds from collapse. He vaulted inside, slamming his fist against the nearest control panel. "Get us the hell out of here." The ship moved. With a roar, the Exodus's thrusters ignited. The entire garage shuddered as the vessel tore free, debris scattering in all directions. Jack barely made it to the cockpit before the ship lurched skyward, engines flaring against the night. Below, the remaining Council ships adjusted their trajectory, locking onto him. Jack's grip tightened on the controls. "All right, big guy. Let's see what you can really do." The ship responded immediately. The organic plating along the console pulsed, as if in recognition. And then the stars twisted, warped, bent. The Exodus moved faster than any ship Jack had ever flown. 1 second, the enemy vessels were closing in, their targeting systems locking onto him. The next, the ship performed a maneuver that should have been impossible, a violent, physics-defying turn that threw Jack against his seat. The Council ships tried to compensate, but they were too slow. Jack flipped the weapons system online. Targeting reticles appeared over his pursuers. He grinned. My turn. A barrage of plasma fire erupted from the Exodus, striking the lead ship dead on. It exploded in a flash of blue fire. The second vessel attempted to veer off, but the Exodus moved again, adapting, anticipating. Another precise shot, and the second ship was gone. Silence. Jack exhaled, his heart still hammering. The Exodus slowed, settling into the darkness of space. He leaned back, staring at the pulsing controls. You and I are going to get along just fine. But even as the adrenaline faded, one thought remained. This ship wasn't just a machine. It was something else. And the Council had been willing to kill to keep it buried. Which meant only one thing. They'd be coming again. And next time, they wouldn't underestimate him. Jack sat in the cockpit of the Exodus, his hands still gripping the controls. The aftershocks of battle lingered in his body. His muscles were tense, his breathing shallow, his pulse still pounding from the high-speed dogfight. But as the ship leveled out, cruising through the cold void of space, the weight of everything crashed down on him. He'd just taken on the Galactic Council, and won. That was the kind of thing that didn't just go away. Jack exhaled and leaned back, staring at the pulsing organic plating of the Exodus's dashboard. All right, big guy, talk to me. What the hell are you? For a long moment, there was nothing but the soft hum of the ship's systems. Then, the deep, ancient voice of the AI rumbled through the cockpit. Designated Exodus, last of the Ethernaut-class warships. Created for the final war. Forgotten. Jack frowned. Final war? Who built you? A species long gone. Erased. That sent a chill through Jack's spine. He'd seen planets wiped out before. Entire civilizations turned to dust by the Council's iron grip. But something about this was different. He pulled up the Exodus's records, the same files that had started this whole mess. His fingers hesitated over the console, his gut warning him that whatever he was about to find wouldn't be pleasant. Then he played the oldest log. A grainy hologram flickered to life. An alien figure, tall and robed, with eyes that burned like dying stars. It spoke in a language Jack didn't recognize, but the ship auto-translated. If you're hearing this, then the war is lost. The Council has won, but they have not won forever. Jack stiffened. They fear what we created. This ship, this Exodus, is not just a weapon. It is a key. It is knowledge. It is the last ember of resistance. The figure leaned forward, its gaze piercing even through the hollow projection. To you, whoever finds this, know that you hold the power to end them. But be warned. The Council will hunt you until the stars grow cold. The hologram ended. Jack sat in silence. It wasn't just an old warship. It was something worse. Something the Council had been willing to bury for centuries. He clenched his fists. They hadn't just wanted to destroy the garage. They'd wanted to destroy everything connected to this ship. And that meant they'd be back. Jack stood up, rolling his shoulders. All right, if they want to fight. He glanced at the flickering screens, at the ancient AI waiting for his command. Then let's give them one. The Exodus pulsed in agreement. Jack checked his star charts. He had a long road ahead of him. If he was going to figure out exactly what this ship could do and why the Council feared it, he needed more information. And that meant tracking down people who might know. Problem was, he could count his allies on one hand. One name came to mind, a name he hadn't thought about in years. Zara. If there was anyone in the galaxy who knew about lost technology, hidden wars, and things the Council wanted erased, it was her. She'd spent her life uncovering ancient ruins and forbidden tech, always one step ahead of the authorities. Jack cracked his neck. Looks like I'm making a pit stop. As he locked in the coordinates, a warning flashed on his screen. Incoming transmission. Encrypted. Jack hesitated, then tapped the console. The screen flickered to life. A familiar reptilian face appeared, scales dark as obsidian, golden eyes sharp with concern. Council Commander Vareth. Jack swore under his breath. Of all the things he expected, this wasn't one of them. Jack Hale, Vareth said, voice slow, deliberate. You should be dead. Jack crossed his arms. Yeah, I get that a lot. Vareth studied him for a moment. Then, to Jack's surprise, he sighed. You don't understand what you found. Jack tensed. You mean stole? Because last I checked, I bought this thing fair and square. Is that what you think? Vareth leaned forward. Do you think this is just an old warship? That it's just some weapon you can use against us? His voice darkened. You have no idea what you're holding. Jack stayed silent. Vareth exhaled sharply. Listen to me, human. The Exodus wasn't built to fight the Council. It was built to stop something worse. Jack's stomach twisted. Worse. Vareth's golden eyes locked onto his. You need to destroy that ship before it's too late. The transmission cut out. Jack stared at the blank screen. His hands clenched into fists. The Council didn't beg. They didn't warn. Whatever Vareth was afraid of, it wasn't them. Jack turned to the Exodus, his voice steady. Set course for Zara's last known location. The ship's controls pulsed. Understood. As the Exodus surged forward, a single thought burned in Jack's mind. He wasn't running anymore. He was going to find out the truth, no matter what it cost. The Exodus hurtled through the void, slipping between the shattered remnants of forgotten battlefields. Stars stretched like molten silver outside the cockpit, but Jack barely noticed. His mind was locked on Vareth's last words. You need to destroy that ship before it's too late. Vareth had been afraid, genuinely afraid. And Jack had spent enough time in war to know when a man was bluffing and when he was looking at something bigger than himself. But that didn't change a damn thing. Jack wasn't about to destroy the only real advantage he had. The Council had spent centuries burying the Exodus and everything it stood for. They'd wiped out entire species to make sure no one ever found it. And now, with one old garage purchase, Jack had dug up a ghost they weren't ready to face. Which meant one thing. He had to know what the hell this ship really was. And that meant finding Zara. The last coordinates he had for her led to a dead moon orbiting a dying sun. Not exactly prime real estate. But if anyone could survive out here, it was her. Jack tightened his grip on the controls. You sure you want to do this, big guy? The ship pulsed. We must. The truth cannot remain buried. Jack smirked. Didn't think an AI could have a sense of justice. Not justice. Duty. Jack didn't argue. He had too much on his mind. The moment the Exodus entered the moon's orbit, sensors flared. Hidden defense turrets lit up across the cratered surface, locking onto his ship. Before he could react, a transmission cut through. A woman's voice, sharp and annoyed. I swear to every god in the void, if you're Council, I'm vaporizing you now. Jack grinned. That's not how you greet an old friend, Z. A long pause. Then a sigh. Jack. In the flesh. Damn it, Hale. Do you ever stay dead? Not for lack of trying. A beat of silence. Then, land at the outpost. You got 2 minutes before I change my mind. Jack guided the Exodus down into a narrow canyon. Hidden within its depths, he found an ancient facility half buried in the rock. Zara was waiting for him as he stepped out of the ship. She hadn't changed much. Tall, lean, with sharp violet eyes and a cybernetic arm that probably had a dozen hidden weapons. Zara crossed her arms. You look like hell. Jack smirked. Good to see you too. Her gaze flicked to the Exodus. Her expression darkened. Tell me that's not what I think it is. Jack's smile faded. Depends. What do you think it is? Zara shook her head. You really don't know, do you? Jack exhaled. Z, I need answers. The Council's already tried to kill me for this thing. And Vareth, of all people, told me to destroy it. Zara's eyes widened. Vareth said that? Yeah. Jack studied her. I take it that's bad. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she turned, motioning for him to follow. Come inside. You need to see something. The facility was old. Ancient, even. The walls were lined with artifacts, old data cores, and relics from long-dead civilizations. Zara led him to a terminal and pulled up a file. It was a star map, but half the stars were gone. Jack frowned. What am I looking at? Zara's voice was quiet. a record of something the Council has spent eons erasing. The truth about the Exodus. She zoomed in on one of the missing stars. This was the home world of the Etherians, the species that built your ship. Jack narrowed his eyes. They're gone, Jack. Zara's voice was grim. Not conquered, not enslaved, erased. Every trace of them wiped from existence. Jack felt a cold weight settle in his gut. By the Council? Zara hesitated, then shook her head. No, by something older. She pulled up another file, a fragmented transmission, a desperate, static-filled voice in an alien tongue. The Exodus's AI translated it automatically. They are coming. We do not understand what they are. They are not flesh. They are not machine. They consume light, consume thought. We fought, but it did nothing. If you find this message, run. There is no winning. There is only time. The transmission cut out. Jack stared at the screen. What the hell? Zara turned to him. Jack, whatever the Exodus was built to fight, it's still out there. Jack's mind raced. You're telling me the Council wasn't afraid of this ship because it's powerful. They were afraid because it might wake up something worse. Zara nodded. And if Vareth wanted you to destroy it, maybe it's already too late. Jack exhaled slowly. The pieces were falling into place. The ship, the buried war, the stars that had gone dark. And now he had a choice. If he destroyed the Exodus, he might prevent whatever had wiped out the Etherians from coming back. But if he kept it, if he used it, maybe, just maybe, he could finish what they started. Jack clenched his fists. There was no running from this. He turned to Zara. How do I stop them? Zara sighed. You don't. But maybe, just maybe you can fight. Jack looked back at the Exodus, at the warship waiting for him. His decision was made. He wasn't running. He wasn't hiding. If something was coming for the galaxy, then humanity was going to meet it head-on, and the stars would never forget what happened next. Final line. The universe thought it had witnessed the last of humanity's defiance. But somewhere, on a distant world, a small light flickered, a signal, a voice, a challenge. And the stars braced for what was coming next.